Multiplayer modes, particularly competitive ones, have come to define the gaming memories of millions of people. Generations fondly remember nailing a rival with a green shell just inches from the finish line in Mario Kart, or scoring a glorious play of the game in Overwatch. These standard multiplayer modes, such as deathmatch or team deathmatch in shooters, are absolute classics. Sometimes though, a game will provide a multiplayer offering that's more than a little unconventional. Whether they're throwaway extras that ended up being massive fun or main modes that have largely been forgotten, here are some brilliant and sorely underappreciated PvP modes that are massively underrated. I'm Jess from WhatCulture, and here are 10 underrated PvP modes in video games. Number 10. Triple Battles. Pokemon. For the competitive VGC circuit, double battles have very much become the default for competitive Pokemon play. With team archetypes like Trick Room, Sun, Rain, Sand, and Snow, or Hail as it was known prior to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet to consider, double battles are deceptively deep. In Generation 5, Game Freak started experimenting with a wackier concept: Triple Battle. As the title suggests, these bouts saw 3 Pokemon in play on each side of the field simultaneously. Mechanically, the matches didn't play out too differently, but there were additional elements to consider. The Pokemon in the center, for instance, could attack all foes, but could be attacked by any in turn, while the one on the left could only attack the one directly in front of it and in the center. It was certainly a little unconventional and fiddly, but a welcome tweak to the formula for players who enjoy experimenting. The Triple Battle format has appeared sporadically since, in Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire for instance, but never became a franchise mainstay. Number 9. Hoops mode. ARMS. ARMS is pretty underrated in and of itself. A quirky early addition to the Nintendo Switch library, this exclusive title is one of the most outlandish fighting games ever conceived. The combatants fight each other using their long, extending arms, to which is attached a variety of interchangeable fists. Some have elemental effects, such as a temporary disabling of the opponent's arms or dealing poison damage. Some are faster or slower, and you can exchange speed for power or vice versa. And still others home in on foes or act as rather unwieldy shields. Standard battles in ARMS, thanks to the rather silly premise, are unique enough. Hoops mode, however, isn't the most serious. Here, players must grapple their foe to dunk them in an oversized basketball hoop. This tends to be done by throwing them, but special moves can launch them into the hoop too. In ARMS, throws require both arms, and so leave the thrower very vulnerable if their attempt fails. Hoops mode then is all about getting yourself into position to grab without being grabbed, whilst remembering that scoring from further out offers more points. Number 8. The Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass. Battle Mode. The Legend of Zelda series has traditionally been a single-player affair. Nevertheless, there have been forays into multi-link action, Four Swords being a memorable example. And though they've been rather throwaway in comparison, they've been worthy additions to the series regardless. The Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass was a mainline adventure on the Nintendo DS. Being a major release for the system, this Wind Waker-esque seafaring adventure naturally included some touchscreen shenanigans. The multiplayer battle mode sees one player control the iconic hero, and the other control a series of 3 phantoms, magical knights of sorts, as seen being blasted out by Zelda in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Link's goal is to carry certain score-wielding crystals to special zones in the arena, while the player controlling the phantoms must catch up with him to stop him doing so. It's simple but surprisingly competitive and tense. Drawing paths for the phantoms to cut off Link's escape as the hero's player tries to roll out of a safe zone at just the right angle to avoid their sword swings is a blast. Number 7. Tekken 3 and Tekken Tag Tournament 2. Tekken Ball Mode. Tekken 3 for many remains the pinnacle of PlayStation 1 fighting games. The series had firmly established itself as a force to be reckoned with its 2 previous entries, but Tekken 3 was a phenomenal sequel. With its enormous roster and robust range of play modes, it was a formidable package indeed. A bunch of great newcomers were added with this title, as well as some distinctly quirky modes like Tekken Force, a sort of scrolling beat-em-up affair, and Tekken Ball. The players must strike the ball with attacks to send it flying at their opponent. If struck by it, they'll take damage. It's simple and chaotic, but crucially, there's more to it than there may appear. Different types of ball can be selected, causing various degrees of damage. There's not a lot of strategic nuance, but the closing seconds of any bout are as intense as any standard fight. Number 6. Time Splitters 2, Monkey Assistant. The acclaimed Time Splitters series is known for its absurd sense of humor and silly characters, and the much beloved Time Splitters 2 offered a mode that made being in last place a little easier to bear. Monkey Assistant mode plays out in familiar fashion for the most part. Players score points for defeating enemies and the highest score wins. The twist is that the player in last place has a furry little helper. At regular intervals, a group of gun-toting monkeys join the fray in support of that player. It all makes a rather conventional base experience far sillier and more chaotic than it could have been, which naturally is what these games have always done best. Number 5. Pikmin 3 Bingo Battle. Pikmin 3's entire story revolves around the concept of cooperation. The members of the stranded crew will not survive without each other, or without their leafy new allies, the Pikmin. Nevertheless, the game also sees fit to pit players against each other in the riotous Bingo Battle mode. In this mode, each player is given a bingo card to complete, with various pieces of fruit and so on to collect. Bringing this specific thing back to Onion first ticks it off, and, well, you can see where that's going. The franchise tends to be known for the time factor, whether it's ticking down the days until Olimar's life support system fails, or until the team runs out of precious life-giving smoothies. Time management has always been key. Bingo Battle emphasizes this factor while also tweaking the strategy required when against another player. The Pikmin 3 campaign can be played in co-op, and it's a lot of fun managing and maintaining a team of Pikmin between you. In the light of that, the PvP element of Bingo Battle is often forgotten. Number 4. Super Mario Odyssey Luigi's Balloon World. As with the Legend of Zelda series, the mainline Super Mario titles are primarily single-player. Odyssey offered an optional co-op experience in which one player took the role of Mario's new friend Cappy, but this made the core game very different. The levels are, in places, built around the player's deft manipulation of Cappy, charging Mario with bouncing off his friend to make clever jumps and cross ground. Co-op negated this somewhat, but it was still a blast. Long after the game's initial release, it was updated with a curious new mode that added a competitive element called Luigi's Balloon World. This new mode demanded good knowledge of the game's wide open worlds. It tasked one player with hiding a rather inconspicuous balloon somewhere, in a sneaky little cave or behind a building for instance, and the other had a limited time to find it. Through online play, it was possible to hunt the balloons of players all around the world. A simple idea, but the lure of trying to find just one more was tricky to resist. Your performance is even ranked, fleshing out Mario's historic collectathon gameplay in a notably fresh way. Number 3. Assassin's Creed Multiplayer. Assassin's Creed. The Assassin's Creed titles, as any fan will tell you, have developed into some of the most expansive open-world adventures around. They also, and there's a bit of a pattern forming here, predominantly focus on the single-player experience. The hot Ubisoft property, you might think, is fertile ground for potential multiplayer modes. What if those people you were tasked with stealthily assassinating from the shadows weren't just NPCs, but fellow players actively trying to avoid you? This was the main premise of the multiplayer action offered by Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, AC3, Revelations, and Black Flag. Across the games mentioned, modes such as Assassinate, in which a player must detect their assigned victim among other players and NPCs to kill them, and Alliance, in which an opposing team of assassins had to be taken out, kept the formula fresh and engaging. Sadly, Assassin's Creed Multiplayer didn't seem to garner the necessary attention, as its servers have since been taken offline. Number 2. Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. Duel Mode. The Star Wars franchise is home to some of the most iconic and beloved characters in science fiction history. When it comes to translating the series into video games, there's one big thing that lots of players probably want to see, and that is, of course, lightsaber battles. Huge scale set pieces against waves of stormtroopers are one thing, and have been in no short supply in Star Wars games over the years, but there's something intimate, something so dramatic about a one-on-one lightsaber duel. The video game adaptation of Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith provided just this. In its duel mode, the player could select from classic characters like Count Dooku, Obi-Wan, General Grievous, and Darth Vader. Powerhouses from both sides of the Force's moral spectrum collided in dream matchups in locations from across the world of the movie that would please any Star Wars fan. Granted, the mechanics of combat themselves aren't as in-depth as those of a fully fledged fighting game, but neither were they supposed to be. Duel mode is all about the fan service, the spectacle, and it's a worthy part of the package as a result. Number 1. Bushido Blade Versus Mode. A versus mode naturally isn't an innovative addition to a fighting game by any means. The frequently underappreciated PlayStation classic Bushido Blade, however, offered something that's rarely been seen since. Loading up versus mode, the players select from a roster of warriors, including including Tatsumi, Mikado, Black Lotus, and more. The first wrinkle arises with the next choice to be made, that fighter's weapon. The default katana is present as expected, but the likes of the longsword, rapier, broadsword, and sledgehammer are also available. What really sets Bushido Blade's gameplay apart is the fact that there are no lengthy health bars here, no impossibly acrobatic special moves, projectiles, or absurd super attacks. The game's focus is on realism. A deadly strike with a blade is precisely that. As such, a careful balance of defense and offense is crucial to victory. Dashing in, blade flailing, and hoping can sometimes clinch victory, but you're much better off working for it. That's the end of our list, but let me know down in that comment section if you can think of other underrated PvP modes in video games. As always, I've been Jess from WhatCulture. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you like, you can say hi to me on my Twitter account where I'm @JessMcDonald, but make sure you stay tuned to us here for plenty more gaming goodness.